Hey guys, so recently, if you've been on Twitter, Instagram, or like Reddit, you'll see artwork done of this character called Petra Parker, which isn't a gender bent Peter Parker or an AU where Peter Parker is a woman. It's what happens if Peter Parker transitions into a woman. So Peter Parker as a trans woman. So I figured I'd want to make a list of whether Spider Man villains would be transphobic or not, if they would support Petra or not. We're just going to stick with calling them Spidey for now, just because there hasn't seemed to be like a name people agree on yet. They're still arguing about it. I'm sure by the time I put this up, they'll settle of one, but we're just going to stick with Spidey. Now, to explain the categories real quick, I put three categories. The first one is like an ally slash they don't care. So for that, ally means someone who would support Petra, right? They'll support the transition, or they don't care. They'll be like, fine, whatever. You don't want to be Spider Man. I'll call you what you want to be called. I'm not going to be friends with you, though, because I'm still like a criminal. So for that one, I actually had in mind Shocker. We're going to put Shocker as our first ally slash doesn't care. Shocker is still going to do Shocker things, but sure, yeah, Spider Woman, Spider Gal, Spider Girl, whatever. He's still going to do it. I do want to make note something real quick. The list is going to be 616 continuity, and it's only like the characters I'm familiar with. Like, for example, I'm familiar with Hydro Man from the 90s show, but I don't really know him too well in the comics. So that's why he's not going to be on this list. And then our second category is going to be like just a transphobe in general. Someone who's like, they don't support it regardless. It doesn't. For someone like that, I'm gonna put the second Vulture. I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but it's basically this was I want to say late Steve Ditko or early John Romita, probably early John Romita. While Adrian Toomes was in prison, he met this other burglar, and the burglar befriended him to the point where, like, when Toomes faked his death, the burglar knew where like the Vulture gear was stashed. So yeah, I call him the second Vulture. He's not very relevant, so he's going to go on transphobe. Now, the next item is transphobe, but only towards Spidey. That means they do support LGBTQ rights. You know, they're an ally. However, but they're specifically transphobic towards Spider Man. And for that, I'm going to put the Jackal. The Jackal is probably someone who would support trans people, right? And like, he understands it. He doesn't need to explain to him. He knows how it works. He believes it. But if he can fuck with Spider-Man, he'll be transphobic. So now that we got established, we're going to go through the list. So who should we start with? I'm going to say for, with the thing with the hobgoblins, right? How many hobgoblins there are. For this list, we only have Urich. I think it was Phil Urich, Ben Urich's nephew. And we have Kingsley. So going with Urich, I'm going to put an ally slash doesn't care. But for Kingsley, I'm going to put transphobe, but only towards Spidey. I could see a good chunk of Kingsley time was fucking with Spider-Man, making his life harder. And any way it could make it more difficult, whether it was like with the robots, the mind washing, anything like that. If it could help him, like, make Spider-Man angry, just like keep him off guard, he would do it. So that's why I'm willing to put him toward transphobic, but only towards Spidey. Phil, he's like a younger guy. Shoot, I really like him in MC2, but because this is 616, we're not gonna really touch that. Basically, he's hip and in the now. I think he would support it. I'm gonna say for Craven, and obviously this was the best Craven picture I could have used. Please respect that. He's gonna be an ally slash doesn't care. It doesn't matter for him. It's all about the hunt. He doesn't matter who the opponent was, and I think he'll respect it. Oh, another thing I should have said at the beginning. This list is going to be like the character's entire history. Like, take Venom, for example. Where's Venom? Venom, I could see him originally being, like, in his first appearance, transphobe, but only towards Spidey. But we have the entire history of the character. which how he is now. He's basically a hero, kind of still an anti-hero, but he's chill now. So with that in mind, original Venom, his original appearance, transphobe but only towards Spidey. Now he's an ally slash doesn't care. He's probably more of an ally than doesn't care. I can see Eddie Brock being cool like that. Uh, we're also gonna do one character per one identity. So when we're taking this into account, if we do someone like Scorpion, we're including his time as Venom too. So Matt Gargan, I'm gonna put him as a transphobe. I don't think he fucks with it. He's very misogynistic. I actually kind of don't like his time as Venom, considering it got really gross, really cannibalistic, and somewhat sexual violence. It was actually kind of common for him. So I'm just gonna put him up as a straight up transphobe. And this is mostly because of his time as Venom. So we're gonna do multiple ident. So when I say Mac Gargan, just know I'm talking about Mac Gargan. Kindred. Kindred is a transphobe, but only towards Spidey. Again, it's someone who just wants to fuck with them, someone who wants to make their life more miserable. If there's a way to do it, he'll do it. The same thing is gonna be true for Norman Osborn Green Goblin. Sorry, the picture isn't the best the way they did it, but this is Norman Osborn Green Goblin. He's a okay. Now it's a little hard because of like, shoot. Okay, so actually, I kind of want to put him in transphobe in general, but because of like the Zeb Wells late Nick Spencer run, I actually I don't really like that. Then I think I have to put him slash an ally slash doesn't care. Now, if this was like Norman original appearance, I would say transphobe. He's a billionaire businessman. He's kind of a piece of shit. Norman, he didn't become a piece of shit because of the Goblin formula. He was always a piece of shit. The Goblin formula just made him stronger, have superpowers. If this was like Norman in the 90s, like after he was brought back because of the Clone Saga, I would put him. I would either keep him in transphobe or transphobe only towards Spidey. But because we are taking into account the character's entire history, I'm gonna put it ally slash doesn't care, which I kind of hate. But magic shotguns kind of cure you. He's getting better. I'm gonna say Al. Who should I do next? Actually, Rhino. Rhino's an OG. He's an ally. He'll. You'd be like, hey, I'm not Spider-Man anymore. My new name is whatever. Rhino. He's like kind of a. I don't want to say peaceful guy. He's a criminal. But at the same time, he's not, I don't know, malicious, if that makes sense. He's one of those characters where, like, for him, it's more about, I don't know, he's a criminal, but he's not, like, a bad person. Max Dillon, I'm putting him in transphobe. I'm not gonna lie. He's sort of like, I don't know. Max Dillon feels inconsistent a lot of the time. Usually he's like just a criminal, a creep, whatever. Not necessarily like he's mean spirited. Definitely in his original appearance, he's very mean spirited. When he like says, "Hey, I'll only help those people if they pay me extra, whatever." Which that's fair if you're gonna put your life in danger. But he's like, "Ugh, I'm not even gonna consider helping them till you like triple my check or whatever." Maybe with Marvel Knight Spider-Man, he would be put into only towards Spidey, but I don't know. I'm just gonna keep him in transphobe until I see him do better. Mysterio, we're gonna put Mysterio on the list right here. I don't feel like I need to explain it. Mysterio is very much into the arts, into cinema, into theater, and generally people who are into the arts, they're a lot more accepting as people. Oh, something I should have mentioned. Usually on like tier, what's it called? Like a tier list. The closer you are to the front means like you're more of that thing. This is only like the layers. So if you're here versus being here, there's no distinction. You're just on that level. Chasm, Ben Riley, we're gonna put him transphobe, but only towards Spidey. It's a little weird because like him as a character currently is just sort of nebulous. I don't really feel consistency from him. It's more like early on he was all about messing with Spider-Man, especially like after, Peter came back as Spider-Man after like his radiation poisoning. But then later on he was Spider-Man helping out Peter. But in very sense it's like, hey, I'm gonna mess with you, I'm gonna make your life like a little harder. So that's why I'm gonna put him transphobe, but only towards Spidey. Um I guess while we're with clones, where's Kane? I saw him a second ago. Where's Kane? Oh, there he is. Where he's like an ally slash doesn't care. Kane, you know, he's with his early appearances, he's sort of like like a brooding, dark figure. But you never get the sense that like he's doing his things not. He's definitely out of anger, but also it's like almost like a reluctance to it. So I can kind of see him being like he doesn't really care that much. And with like his later runs, I think he's going to be specifically supportive of Peter. Petra, forgive me. Sin Eater, Sin Eater, I'm going to put him as transphobe. He has like, listen, his whole point is that he feels like, what's it called? He was like part of the reason why he killed Jean DeWolf was like part of it was her being like working part of a system he think was hurting people, like in the sense that it wasn't doing its job, not that it was hurting people. Sorry, I misspoke. But also you kind of get the sense there's like a lot of like Christian guilt about like, oh hey, this woman is like not acting womanly. You sort of get that vibe from him. I'm not necessarily calling him an incel, just like sort of weird Christian internal politics. So that's why I'm going to put him as a transphobe. I don't really see him being an ally. We're going to put the Rose. This one is specifically Wilson Fisk's son. I'm going to put him as like, he'll be respectful. He'll be like, okay, whatever. I don't really see him fucking too much. Being like, oh, actually, Spider-Man. No, he always has that vibe of like elegance. He'll go along with it. I don't know if he necessarily believes it, but he'll go along with it, which it's one of those things. Which one is more important, like acting outside versus like what you actually believe? But because these aren't real people and just comic book characters, you can't really say for sure. Meanwhile, with Ally, we're gonna put the Beetle, the newest one, Janice, Tombstone's daughter. I don't feel like this one needs too much of an explanation. I get the sense that she generally doesn't care. Like she's still Spider-Man's enemy, whatever, but she's not gonna be like, oh, we're best friend now, you know? She's a very like self-centered person. I guess maybe Robbie is the exception, but it's kind of a struggle. So yeah, I don't really see her as being transphobic. I'm gonna be straight up honest. Sandman, I'm also gonna put him in ally. God, these pictures. I'm sorry. I wish I did these pictures better. But we got Flint Marco. Ally, like I said, it's the same thing with Rhino where he's not necessarily malicious. He just, when he is alive and also a criminal and not brainwashed, you don't get the sense that he's necessarily a bad person. Kind of dumb, but he's not going out of his way to be malicious. Next we have so this is not Harry Osborn Green Goblin. This is actually Harry Osborn's therapist. I don't actually remember who was the actual second Goblin because this was only a couple of issues. I don't think Harry was the Green Goblin yet. It was actually like his therapist who like Harry told him it's like, yeah, my dad was the Green Goblin. Also, Spider-Man is Peter Parker, and his therapist was like, oh, okay, cool. Let me write that down. I'm gonna put him as like an ally, with psychiatry guys. I could see it fitting. But while we're on Green Goblins, we're gonna put Harry as a transphobe, but only towards Spidey, because I'm thinking in my head, right? I'm thinking about the time with like the robot parents, and then also you have like the recent retcon where like the twins, Gabriel and I forgot her name, Sarah? Basically Gwen Stacy's daughters, right? Gwen Stacy's children. I'm pretty sure it was recently within like the last 5 years, they were actually retconned as not being Norman's children, but it was a thing did by Harry to fuck with Peter. So that's why I'm gonna put him in transport, but only towards Spidey. Some of you might be saying technically Harry should be Kindred, but like it's kind of confusing, man. I kind of want to keep him as his own. And that's like the thing. Where like Harry, his kindred, at least in one of the, because there's two kindreds, I think, and yeah, I know I'm kind of breaking my own rules, but we're gonna keep Harry, you know, as Green Goblin specifically, not kindred. We're gonna put him transphobe, but only towards Spidey. So that means usually he'd be an ally, or he'd just be neutral. Because like in some things, if you're neutral, it's actually kind of not malicious but hurtful. But like, yeah, he'd be supportive, I guess. If someone like corrects them on their pronouns, whatever, he'd go along with it, unless it's Spidey. But then he won't do it. Um, I'm a little for Adrian Toomes, the original Vulture. I kind of want to put it as like doesn't care. Uh, I don't know. Adrian Toomes is sort of weird for like you get the vibe that maybe. Well, first of all, he's not a good person. Adrian Toomes specifically not a good person. Like how Rhino isn't malicious, but like still does bad things, or like Craven does a lot of bad things, but he doesn't do it to be malicious. Adrian Toomes is definitely a bad person who does things to be malicious, but I still think I'll put him in the ally slash doesn't care category. Chameleon, Chameleon, he's flexible. We're gonna put him in ally slash doesn't care. Okay, Boomerang. Okay, I'm gonna put Boomerang in ally slash doesn't care, but he's gonna be weird about it if that makes sense. Like Fred is just sort of the guy where it's like, he's trying to like outwoke someone, but then the shit he says is actually kind of hurtful and like, okay, yeah, you don't really get it. That's the vibe I get from Boomerang. Doc Ock, I'm gonna put him as an ally. He was abused all his life. I think he'll have a little more sympathy towards someone who's also going through a struggle. So I'm gonna put it as Doc Ock as an ally. Hammerhead. See, Hammerhead has had surgery to like reaffirm their gender. I know it's a little bit of a joke, but he got surgery, the adamantine skull, to make him more tough and all that. But I feel like if it's about other people, he'll be pretty weird about him, so I'm going to put him as a transphobe. White Rabbit, I'm going to put her as ally. I think she's chill. She doesn't really care. She's like in her own like Wonder World. They kind of made her a bit more serious, but like she was recently Tombstone's like capo, I guess, or like what Tom's position was in The Godfather, sort of like that. And I don't really feel like that fits for her, but that's as a character, not as their like ideology. For that regard, she's just here. But we can have another thing about the characters themselves. Prowler, also an ally slash doesn't care, or no, he'll be specifically an ally. Prowler, he's cool like that, I love Prowler, I really do. His suit is cool. Um, I'm also thinking because there was like a run in the comics where like Prowler and like Big Racer. This was in the Spectacular Spider-Man comic specifically, like around the 200s or like mid 150s to 200s. They appeared in the comics pretty frequently. I don't have Rocket Racer on my list, but like I think he would also be in the same area. I was thinking about putting Big Wheel on the list, but I don't know anything about him. But I get the vibe of a transphobe. But he's not on this list. I don't know him that much, so we're not going to comment. Tombstone. What would Tombstone be? Before we get to Tombstone, we're going to put Alistair Smythe, like the second, the one from like Superior Spider-Man, the son. We're going to put him a transphobe only towards Spidey. But his dad, we're going to put him as like someone who doesn't care slash an ally. He's in his own world. He doesn't really care. If someone corrects him, be like, fine, whatever, just give me funding. This guy is like actually malicious. I don't think he cares too much about like the discourse. He really doesn't. But if he can hurt Spider-Man because he wants to like have his revenge, he'll do it. He doesn't care what lines he cross. Uh, Puma, I see him similar to Craven, so I'm gonna put him here on this list. Ally doesn't care, you know. He sees Spider-Man as sort of like Spidey, sort of as like a rival, someone to challenge. So I don't think he'd care too much about being like, oh, okay, you're different than how you are. You can make an argument that he comes from a kind of like a very traditional background, like almost conservative background. He clashes his head against his grandfather, but like his grandfather is very much we got to stay in our ways. But specifically Puma, he's like no, no, you know we got to change how we do things. It's a new world type thing. Now that is mostly in reference to like it's hard to describe fully in detail like the real world, but like Southwest like Native Americans. I think specifically Pumas from Arizona. I want to say that's why I'm saying Southwest Native Americans, but I'm applying it toward like the trans question. Not really so much a trans question, but like how they see it. You know, he's more willing to like, hey, we're in a new era. We gotta change how we do things. Uh, Tarantula. I'm gonna put him as a transphobe. Yeah, he this tarantula. He's specifically the one I'm thinking of that teamed up with like the new Captain America. He works for like the Mexican government. He's like he works for the government. He's an assassin. You know, it's very like it's chud coded. I'm not gonna lie. It's sort of how you'd see from like the troops almost, where it's like it's my way. I'm a meathead, you know. So yeah, I'm gonna put him as a transphobe. Uh, doppelganger, doppelganger, doppelganger. Oh lord, I'm gonna say ally slash doesn't care mostly because he's not really, you know. It's the same thing with Morloon. I, I don't think they really care about that. I don't think Doppelganger can care about it. You know, I don't think like that thoughts goes in his head. And Morloon is just like, okay, whatever. I'm gonna eat you. You know, I'm gonna suck the life force out of you. He's gonna do the big suck. Mister Negative. Okay, this is a little hard. I'm I'm gonna say doesn't care. Not an ally. Definitely doesn't care. You know, Mister Negative's one of those characters where like I know he's changed a lot currently how he is in the comics now versus like when he first started. I'm more familiar when he like was first around. So with that in mind, I'm gonna put him as like an ally, but specifically doesn't care. But we're not making distinction for this like little thing. So yeah. Scorpia. We're gonna put it Scorpia as an ally. You know, she's chill with it. You know, she wasn't racist toward mutants or anti-mutant or mutant phobic, whatever you want to say. I think she's a lot more open. If it was like Scorpia in the 90s, I'd probably put her as a transphobe, but mostly because well, no, she very Matrix inspired, but like she looks like she has that vibe. Yeah, like I said, I don't know too much about like the old Scorpia. You know, it's the same character, I believe, but I'm much more familiar with her now. For now, I'm yeah, ally. Demo Goblin. See, I kind of maybe I should have separated ally slash doesn't care like neutral. I originally I was gonna have a category called wishy washy, but it felt a little off having it. But with Demo Goblin, I'm gonna put him as doesn't like an ally, but specifically doesn't care. You know, considering he's like a demon. Uh, mm, who else is on the list? This would be who was this? Shoot, hold on, who was that? I don't remember who this is. Hold on a second. Let's see. Let's see. Let's see. One second. Who was that? Downloads. I want to say that's Silvermane, Tombstone, Kingpin. No. Rhino, Jackal, Shocker, Moreland, Vulture, Chameleon. Here, let's go for this. Oh, the Tinkerer. Yeah, it was the Tinkerer. Tinkerer. I don't think he cares. I really don't. I don't see him having a strong opinion about this. New Rhino, the one that killed like Alexi's wife, and then Alexei killed in retribution. Transphobe, very much that attitude. Tombstone. I want to say. Listen, it's weird to say because Tombstone, he comes like he's a black man who is an albino, right? So he's already like, hey, I got my own struggles here. I'm like a black man in the 70s, like, I think 80s. He's an 80s character, if I don't remember. I come from a poor background specifically. Did he know Robbie? No. I don't think that's necessarily true. That was in the show, the 90s show. He and Robbie, they came from a poorer background together. I don't know if that's also in the comics, because I think in the comics they met each other like later on, like college age or high school age. But in the show, it was much younger. With how he is right now in like the Wells run, where he's like sort of his own mob, I think it's kind of inspired by Spectacular Spider-Man. Like, hey, I'm a head honcho instead of being a brute. I could see him being like ally / doesn't care, but like he's got that very much transphobic vibe. I'm not gonna lie. It could go either, but I think I'm gonna keep him here. Kingpin is gonna be transphobic towards Spidey specifically. That's how he's gonna be like. Silvermane. I'm gonna put Silvermane as a transphobe. Yeah, it's a vibe thing. I could be wrong, but it's a vibe thing. Let's see. The Enforcers. Bull, Steely Dan, Crime Master, and the other one. I'm gonna put them as here. Ally / doesn't care. Not just they come. Oh God, how do I explain it? Okay, they basically come from like a circus background, right? Meaning that they're like insulted, they're jeered, all that, specifically because like, I don't know. God, I don't remember. I think Steely Dan is the one with the hat here. That's Bull. I don't remember this one. But basically, they come from like a circus background. They're insulted. They're considered freak shows, right? So I think with that, I think they would have a little more empathy toward trans people, and they'd be supportive. There's also Crime Master. I think he was like that Daily Bugle. God, what's his name? He was a really important like Ditko character. Same thing. I'm gonna put him there. Like I said, he's like a hip, cool journalist working for the decently progressive Daily Bugle. We're gonna put him there. Screwball. Yeah, it'd be kind of funny if Screwball was transphobic. Not that transphobia in of itself was funny, but it would be funny if she was transphobic, but she was pretending not to be to get more views and stuff like that. Which I don't think that's the case, but I kind of it might be my new headcanon. I could see Shriek being weirdly transphobic, but I same thing. I don't think she really cares. Vermin, I don't think he has the ability to care. I almost want to put him as a transphobe, actually, because I vaguely remember from Kraven's Last Hunt that most of I want to say most of his victims were women, but I guess it would be depends how he saw them. But also, he's sort of like a mindless animal for the most part, so we're going to put him like doesn't care. Molten Man. God, Molten Man is sort of like, he's one of those characters where it's like you'll never meet anyone who says Molten Man is their favorite character. And for that, I'm going to put him as transphobe, because like, it'd be kind of funny if there's one person here being like, no, he isn't. You know, he's a actually really cool character with all this. Yeah, we're just gonna put him there. You know, Jack o' Lantern. Which there's a couple different Jack o' Lanterns. I don't know which one I'm thinking of. I'm gonna put him transphobe, but only towards Spidey. You know, the demon trans. Demon trans. No, okay. There's a couple different ones. I don't know which one is which. I guess I've read a bunch of them, but like never focuses on their identity too much. So we're gonna keep him transphobe, but only towards Spidey. Kingpin, yeah. Spot doesn't care. Yeah, for these ones, I'm also gonna put them. Yeah, yeah, that's my list. I guess they're more progressive than we thought. Also, we're just gonna go through the pictures real quick because I actually kind of feel bad because like they're not the best quality photos. Got the enforcers, crime master, Steely Dan, the middle one, Bull. We got the Rose, Mr. Negative, Hammerhead, Silvermane, Tombstone, Kingpin, Electra, JK, it's Electro, Carnage, Craven, Doc Ock, Scorpion, Rhino, Mysterio, Sandman, Hobgoblin 2, technically 5 or 6 if we want to, not include the other ones. Oh, there was that one with like the camera face. Like, we're not even gonna touch that. OG Hobgoblin, Spot, Beetle, Sin Eater, Kindred, Prowler, Puma, Chasm, Kane, Screwball. Technically, Scarlet Spider. Technically. Yeah, I guess maybe I should have said Scarlet Spider instead of Kane. Well, Jack o' Lantern, Doppelganger, Shriek, Demo Goblin, Vermin, Tarantula, Tinkerer, White Rabbit, Boomerang, Smythe. The Elder Smythe. Alistair is the son, I think. Alistair Smythe, Molten Man, Morbin Time, Chameleon, Vulture 2, that crook I talked about, OG Vulch, Morloon, Shocker. Rest in peace, big guy. You recently passed away. It's fucked up they did that. Jackal. Also, with Jackal, we're not going to make a distinction between the clone. We're just Miles Warren, Jackal. That's it. We're not going to talk about this Jackal, that Jackal. I'm pretty sure there's like a bunch of them. Rhino 2, Venom, Goblin, Therapist Goblin, Harry Goblin, Norman Goblin. God, it feels so messed up we put it Norman Goblin as an ally. I really think he should have been transphobe, but transphobe only towards Spidey. But, you know, things change until they don't. Anyway, let me know your thoughts.